Welcome to the Patriots Pulse Preview Show. I'm your host, John Serenitas, and as always, I'm joined by my partner, John Sapichetti. Sap, good morning. How are you on this Sunday morning?
Good morning, Merry Christmas, but I must be sure to be careful wishing you Merry Christmas. Last time we mentioned Christmas, you went on a tirade how much you hate the holiday and so forth. So how about Happy Week 16? How's that sound?
Yeah, Christmas sucks. It's stupid. And this time of the year in the NFL sucks and is stupid because we're playing out the string, basically. Obviously, you got the games with playoff implications, but there's also a lot of bad matchups. So we're just about at that time where the NFL starts to run its course, and you're like, all right, let's get into the playoffs here and get to the Super Bowl. So we'll see. Nonetheless, Patriots have a big game tonight, at least I think. Coming off the heels of a 35-31 loss to the Buffalo Bills last week, Patriots travel to Baltimore tonight to take on the Baltimore Ravens, who are currently 7-7. Of course, this game was scheduled to be played at 1 p.m., but it was flexed out 2 weeks ago to a Sunday night game. And look, I think we all thought coming down the stretch here that the Patriots were probably going to end up playing one of these games, either in that 4:25 slot or the Sunday Night Football slot. Not a surprise that ultimately the NFL chose to play this game on Sunday Night Football. Big game for both teams, obviously for the Patriots. They need to bounce back after choking away that game last week against the Buffalo Bills. And for Baltimore, they need this one to stay both in the divisional race and in the playoff race. Of course, if the Pittsburgh Steelers lose to the Detroit Lions this afternoon and the Patriots lose to the Baltimore Ravens, the Ravens would then be in the tie for first place in the AFC North. So obviously a lot at stake for both teams. Patriots haven't clinched anything yet. They haven't clinched a division, which they could have done last week with a win. They haven't clinched a playoff spot. So a lot to play for tonight between these two teams.
Without question, obviously the Patriots had a 10-game winning streak snapped last week against the Buffalo Bills. And when you look at that game, they had a 21-0 lead in the second quarter, 24-7 at the half. Felt like they were in control of that game. And then they just were god-awful in the second half in all three phases. Offensively, John, other than Travion Henderson's 65-yard run on a broken play, they had 2 first downs the entire second half, 35 yards of offense. Obviously, defensively, they couldn't stop Buffalo. Buffalo, led by Josh Allen, but even more so by James Cook, was able to put points on the board at will in that point. And even special teams broke down, gave Buffalo some good field position on a few occasions. And next thing you know, the Bills win the game 35-31. So the reaction nationally has been the Patriots are frauds. They're not that good, yada, yada, yada. Or you get the other reaction is that's what they needed to lose a game to kind of correct whatever they've been doing wrong. Well, I mean, I think somewhere there's a place for nuance in sports talk radio. Believe it or not, there is a place for nuance. And I think what we've seen here with the Patriots loss to Buffalo is that their lack of quality depth is biting them right now, especially along the offensive and defensive line. Milton Williams has been their best defensive player this year. He's missed the last 3 games. They've not been able to stop the run. Robert Spillane is a tackling machine. He didn't play last week. Buffalo gashed them on the ground at will, especially in the second half. So that's a concern going forward. Offensively, they went to sleep in the second half for whatever reason. So those are concerns going into this game. I don't think they're frauds at all. I think there's still a contender in the AFC. Even if they lose this game, John, if they win the next 2, they win the division at 13-4. I think you'd sign up for that when the season started. 13-4 AFC East champs and most likely the number 2 seed. But that game did hurt because you were in complete control, ready for the hats and T-shirts, and then they just let it slip away.
Couple of things. One, no one in this league has depth. So let's get that out of the way. You saw it last night. Packers have a whole bunch of injuries. No, they lost that game. They choked it away. That's proof that no one really has depth. People will point to the 49ers, and they'll tongue-bathe Kyle Shanahan for the job he's done. They also have one of the easiest schedules in the league. So they've capitalized on that despite their injuries. And I think it also speaks to how some of their high-end guys are a bit overrated, Warner, both. So they're very good players, but they clearly the 49ers have proven that they can win without them. So they might not be as elite as we think. So I think, look, we can sit here and say whatever we want about Milton Williams, Robert Spillane. I think the bottom line is this. They don't know how to win. This group collectively does not know how to win. Good teams who know how to win finish those games. They don't know how to win yet. And that's the bottom line. I know they won 10 in a row, and I know they've had a great year and they're 11-3, and people will say, well, wait a minute. You're telling me they don't know how to win, then they won 10 in a row. They've won 11 games. Of course they know how to win. They know how to win. They just don't know how to win those kinds of games. And that's where I think you take the next step as an organization when you win games like that. And I know people will point to that Sunday night game in Buffalo in October and say, yeah, but they won there in a big game. Sure they did. But my point is, good teams know how to put teams away when they're playing with a lead. They don't know how to do that right now. And if they do know how to do it, the bottom line is they didn't come through when they needed to. You mentioned the offense, 2 first downs in the second half. For the first time this season, I think people can genuinely question Josh McDaniels and his play calling. There was some idiotic conversation amongst media members this week about Vrabel potentially thinking about making a change, and is he second-guessing McDaniels and all these other things. I think that's a bunch of nonsense. I think if that is happening, shame on Vrabel, personally. I mean, Josh McDaniels is as good an offensive coordinator as there is in the league. Look, I think 2 things here. One, give the Buffalo Bills credit. They're a resilient group. They came from behind. They won the football game. They made really good adjustments in the second half. They attacked your weakness, which was the inside of your defense, specifically your front. You're playing without Williams. You're playing without Spillane. They did a really good job of being patient. They didn't press. They didn't force the issue throwing the football. They ran the football, and they got themselves back in the game. Too often when teams are playing from behind, a coordinator's natural inclination is, well, let's just start spraying the thing all over the place. And that's great. And then when you go 3 and out, you punt and you lose the game, now you know why. They did the opposite. They stayed patient. They chipped away. They came from behind. They got the win. Josh Allen is Josh Allen, top 5 quarterback in the league. He made his plays when he needed to. But that game was more about James Cook and their ability to run the football, in my opinion, than it was about Josh Allen. For the Patriots, look, and Vrabel said this after the game, and I agree with him wholeheartedly. You're going to lose football games. It happens, okay? This is the NFL. It happens in every league. Even if you're on a dominant run, eventually you're going to lose a football game. You're going to lose football games. It happens. Football is the ultimate matchup sport. The Buffalo Bills weren't a great matchup for them to begin with. They haven't been, even when they beat him the first time, but it finally caught up with him in that sense. So, you know what? Is it good for them? No. I've never espoused the theory that there's such a thing as a good loss. Losing sucks. But you can draw lessons from losing, and there's plenty of lessons for them to take away from that game and apply those lessons to another big game tonight.
Now, I hear what you're saying about they don't know how to win games, close games like that. Although they did have a 10-game winning streak, a lot of those games were quite hairy. They were in complete control against Tampa.
Yeah, but they were quite hairy against teams that weren't the Buffalo Bills.
No, exactly.
Quite hairy against teams that aren't as good.
Right. The Tampa Bay, who after 6-2 start is now 7-7. The Atlanta Falcons, who, who the hell knows what they're going to be from week to week. Even the Giants game that kind of took the foot off the gas in the second half. They had a huge lead, but their offense went to sleep in the second half of that game.
By the way, can we stop using that analogy? I can't stand that to sleep analogy. It's so stupid. Vrabel uses it too, and it's like, what are you talking about? Anyway, continue.
Well, I think their offense just lost momentum. How's that sound? Like they just didn't seem like they had any urgency.
Sleep is it's like they didn't go to sleep. The bottom line is, I hate to break people's balls on this, but the other team practices too. But continue.
Sure,
go ahead.
Absolutely.
They practice and play football too.
They took a nap. How's that sound? We'll go move around
instead
of
works.
falling asleep. All right. Maybe they don't have sleep apnea or anything like that. But a lot of their games, look at the Cincinnati game was a struggle without Burrow and Chase. I mean, those guys play, they probably lose that game. So, I mean, it's not like they've been playing their best football now. And I wonder, is the Baltimore matchup
And not to cut you off, to your point about them playing their best football, I think you make a valid point in that, and I'm glad you brought it up. They haven't been playing great leading up to this game. As good as they've been, to your point about those games being close, they haven't been playing well. They didn't play well against Cincinnati. You talk about taking the foot off against the Giants. They didn't play great against the Jets either. They're a byproduct of a mediocre league this year. Let's be honest here now. I know that I'm not turning on them here, but they're 11-3 in what has been a wide open, unpredictable, mediocre league this season.
Without question. I mean, again, I bring back their schedule, and you push back a little bit. But again, the three uncommon opponents that they have with the Buffalo Bills, they play 14 games against the same opponents, but they played three uncommon opponents. The Bills are going to play the Philadelphia Eagles next week. They've already played the Texans, lost to them, and they lost to the Chiefs, or they beat the Chiefs when the Chiefs were playing much better football than they are now, obviously without Patrick Mahomes. The three uncommon games that the Patriots had, Giants, Tennessee, Raiders, all three of those teams have 2 wins and are fighting for the first overall pick. So there's a difference in schedules there. But again, give team credit for winning games. To me, the Chicago Bears are the New England Patriots of the NFC. Like, they have an 11-4 record. They've won 6 games despite trailing with 2 minutes left in those games. That doesn't happen year to year. They win the turnover battle. They are able to pull out games out of their ass at some point, like last night against Green Bay, where Green
that
Bay
game was more about the Packers giving it to them.
They just gave it to them,
and they did.
The Packers
and by the way, not to shift gears here, but can we stop with the national tongue bathing of Caleb Williams? He hadn't even thrown for 200 yards before those last 2 touchdown passes. It amazes me. And I saw it with guys here locally and nationally. They love Caleb Williams. I don't see it. I've never seen it with Caleb Williams. But they love to just sit there and slurp away. Oh, Caleb Williams, what a throw. It's like, give me a break. Can we pump the brakes on the dude? I'm not a Caleb Williams guy. I had to get that ranted because it was – and granted, yes, I am a Packers fan, but it was nauseating last night. Okay, made a couple of nice throws. The guy, to me, is a top 20 quarterback at best in this league. He's not a franchise elite-level quarterback, but somehow people have convinced themselves that he is.
Hey, look, this week has started off in some odd fashion. The Rams had a 16-point lead on Thursday night in Seattle, and they blew that game because of a special teams play and the fact that their defense was not able to stop Sam Darnold and the Seahawks in the final 10 minutes of that game.
And the Rams got exposed in that game, which reinforces my point from earlier that this league is so wide open and unpredictable right now. There's no elite team in the league right now.
Not even close to what the Eagles were last year. When we went into the playoffs last year, I felt the Eagles were going to be the team to beat because they were so potent on both lines of scrimmage. They had a 2,000-yard rusher. They had a quarterback who could manage the game, 2 good receivers, defensive players all over the place. Heck, Milton Williams, who's been the best Patriots defender this year, only played 50% of the snaps last year because the 2 guys in front of him are studs. So that's how good that Philadelphia team was last year. There's nothing remotely close to that this year. This thing is completely wide open. The Rams have lost 4 games they probably had no business losing. They haven't been able to close games. The Bears are 11-4 somehow. The Patriots are 11-3, and we've just talked about all the warts that they have. There's no great team right now. It's going to be who can get hot during the tournament, as Bill Parcells would say, and play error-free football and take care of business. Who that is, I have no clue. I think once we find out who the 14 playoff teams are, we might have all different opinions on what the Super Bowl matchup is going to be. And you know what? That's kind of nice. I mean, because we've always just penciled in Kansas City to represent the AFC, and then the NFC was back and forth with Philadelphia or San Francisco. This thing is completely wide open this year, and the Patriots is just part of it.
Yeah, and the Patriots obviously have their 20-year run, and they were a fixture in the playoffs and in the Super Bowl those years. So for the first time, really, in over 20 years, we have legitimate parity in the NFL now where you really can't look to a specific team and say, no, they're the favorite. There is no clear-cut favorite. The Super Bowl could be anybody at this point. I mean, because the Buffalo Bills, who are now in the driver's seat in the AFC and your so-called presumptive favorite, they can get beat at any point. The Philadelphia Eagles, your defending champion, the so-called presumptive favorite in the NFC, they could get beat at any point. The Rams showed you the other night that they're not all that in a bag of chips. They can get beat at any point. The Packers can't stay healthy, and even when they are healthy, they can't win a close game. They can't close out games, so they're not really a contender per se. And then you talk about the Bears. I agree with you wholeheartedly. I think the Bears are the most fraudulent team in the league. I've said that all year. I think their bubble's going to burst here at some point in the next few weeks. So, I mean, again, I think that the league is wide open, and you could have a Super Bowl matchup that none of us right now have any idea is going to happen because it's that unpredictable. For all we know, you can get an LA Chargers, I don't know, an LA Chargers, Seattle Seahawks Super Bowl. I mean, who knows? Again, who would have thought at this point in the season that the Seahawks would be the 1 seed in the NFC? I mean, I think a lot of us thought that they could potentially be a playoff team, but I don't think a lot of us were looking at them and saying, yeah, you know what? They're going to be the 1 seed. they're amongst the favorites. No one said that, despite how well Sam Darnold played last year, and we knew he would make an impact for them. We didn't think they'd be this good. So again, I think it speaks to just how open the league is right now and how anybody could really come out of it. Ken Mathias checks in because he's got nothing better to do. How big do you guys expect a bounce? How big do you guys expect a bounce back right out of the gate tonight against the Ravens? I don't know what the hell he's asking us there, but I think I'm gonna summarize the question. I think Ken is asking us, do we think they're gonna bounce back? Yeah, I think they're gonna bounce back, but this is a tough game, man. And I think their saving grace is Baltimore has been wildly inconsistent this year. But on paper, that's a really good football team. And they could go out and play their best game of the season at any point here in the next 3 weeks. I think this is a tough matchup for the Patriots tonight, John. I think I'm going to say this. I would be surprised if they won tonight. I could see them losing tonight. And look, I said it last week, and it happened. I don't want to be a jinx here, but I think this is a tough matchup tonight. They're walking into the proverbial lion's den. Thanks for checking in, Ken, by the way. Always appreciate you checking in, and I always appreciate you giving me the opportunity to bust your coconuts. Go ahead, Sap.
All right. So as far as Baltimore started the season 1-5. Their defense was god awful. They had injuries. Lamar Jackson missed 3 games. Since he's come back, he has not looked anything like Lamar Jackson throwing the football or running with the football. He's a shell of himself. But they have managed to win 6 of their last 8 games. Their defense is only giving up 17 points per game the last 8 games. That's second in the league. So the defense has improved week after week after week. We have to see what Lamar Jackson is like tonight, how he is going down the stretch. But it is a tough matchup, John, because first of all, you have Derrick Henry to deal with, and the Baltimore Ravens can run the football. Also, Lamar Jackson's favorite targets are his tight ends, Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely. The Patriots have had trouble defending tight ends all season long. So in that sense, I think it's a bad matchup, somewhat similar to the Buffalo matchup in terms of that the quarterback likes to feed the tight ends. And the tight ends had a good game last week against the Patriots for Buffalo, and I expect the same thing tonight for Baltimore. It is a very, very tough matchup. This is still a talented team that still has a chance to sneak in the playoffs, and maybe this is the year the Ravens go 9-8 or 10-7, sneak in the playoffs, and surprise everybody as the 4 seed. Back to one other point I just wanted to tie up a little bit earlier. The Bills are the favorite in the AFC right now. They're also most likely going to be the 5 seed, which means they open the playoffs on the road, most likely at the AFC North champ, whether it's Pittsburgh or Baltimore. I could see Buffalo going into Baltimore and losing, right? I mean, that certainly could happen. And conversely, in the NFC, we see the Chicago Bears as the 2 seed. The Patriots would be the 2 seed in the AFC. I could see them losing to the 7 seeds at some point because the Patriots, if the playoffs started today, that proverbial axiom that makes no sense, but we work with it because we're doing this show today, the Patriots would play the Houston Texans in the first round at Gillette Stadium. That would be a very difficult matchup. The Texans right now have the best defense in football. C.J. Stroud looks a little bit better. That would be a tough matchup, 2 against 7.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think it would be a very difficult matchup only because of their defense. I think their offense is bottom 3rd in the league, and Stroud's playing better. But I think that the Patriots would be favored in that game, and I would expect them to win a game like that simply because I don't think as good as Houston's defense is. I still think they're going to give up points, and I think ultimately the Patriots can outpace the Texans. This Baltimore team has been schizo all year. They're hard to figure out. You talk about them only giving up 17.5 points per game the last 8 weeks. I don't trust Zach Orr as a defensive coordinator. I don't think he's done a great job there. I agree with you, they're talented, but I do think that they have some flaws. They can't consistently rush the passer. Their secondary, is talented as it is, has been generous this year, specifically over the top. Patriots have a real advantage in the vertical passing game tonight. If they could protect, and I expect them to, if they could protect, they should be able to make some big plays in the passing game tonight because as talented as this secondary is, they've been generous this season. Offensively, I agree. I think, look, Mark Andrews, Isaiah Likely, assuming Likely plays, he's likely to play, the Malden/Everett native. I think that they are going to generate tough matchups. Only thing I would say, though, is I don't fear those two like I feared Knox and Kincaid last week simply because they really don't create mismatches until you get inside the 30. And that's where I think Andrews can be tough to handle. But Lamar Jackson is a shell of what he was. I don't think he's playing. He's not even remotely playing at the level we're accustomed to. I don't know what's going on with him. Nothing has changed there. They ran it back. Todd Monken came back as the OC. The tight ends came back. The offensive line came back, attacked Henry, the receivers. Everything was back. They added Nuke Hopkins, but he hasn't been the same since he got hurt. He wasn't even the same before the injury. So that they're an interesting team because you're also, to go back to Bill Parcells, as he used to say, you are what your record says you are. And they're a 7-7 football team for a reason. I don't think that's by accident. I think it's because they're wildly inconsistent. But all that being said, as I said earlier, this is just a tough game for me. And and I hope I'm wrong. I could see the Patriots losing this game, but the key for them tonight, they've got to get off to a good start, get those early stops. Can't give up that early score. You can't give up an early touchdown and give this offense some momentum that, quite frankly, they've lacked this season. They haven't been consistent enough. But getting off to a good start tonight, and it's always paramount on the road, but especially tonight, if they could score first, play with the lead, carry the play early, that's going to be vitally important because if they fall behind early and this Baltimore team gets rolling, it's going to be a long night for the Patriots.
When you look at the Baltimore Ravens, they're the ultimate front-running team because they like to run the football, obviously with Derrick Henry. Lamar Jackson's not the running threat he's been over the years because of these injuries, maybe natural regression because of age. Who knows? But Baltimore's not built to come from behind. They're built to get a lead, build on the lead, and take it home from there. A little different than Buffalo, which even though Buffalo was down by 17 at the half last week, they were patient in running the football, and I give their coaching staff a lot of credit for doing that because, like you said earlier, most teams when they're down 17 at the half just come out throwing the ball all over the place. Well, Buffalo stuck with the run game and it worked out for them, and they ended up winning 35-31. So that's such a great point that you make, is getting that early lead against Baltimore. You kind of get them out of their comfort zone, and they've been turning the ball over a lot this year. Last year, Lamar Jackson had 4 interceptions. He's doubled that in less time this year. He's not the same quarterback. So getting that early lead is paramount for the New England Patriots.
Yeah, and you mentioned, I mean, Baltimore's -4 in turnover differential.
Right.
So they've been turning the ball over a lot. I think when you look at different facets of the game and when you look at the next-gen stats and where this game's going to be decided, for me, Patriots' red zone defense has been atrocious. They're the worst in the league. And that's going to be a problem tonight because this Baltimore team can run the football. Even though Henry has not had the typical Derrick Henry type of season, they can run the football. They're patient, and they're going to be willing to stick with the running game in the red zone. That's concerning to me. No Williams tonight. No Spillane tonight once again. We saw how problematic it was last week. It's going to be a problem again. The Patriots are going to have to do some different things with their fronts. One of my criticism with this team defensively is there isn't enough multiplicity there for me. One of the hallmarks of a Bill Belichick defense for over 20 years was their multiplicity on defense. And Belichick, and of course, Belichick is Belichick, arguably the greatest coach of all time. But one of the things he was really good at was, especially on defense, was playing to the strength of his talent and using his talent in a myriad of ways. I don't think there's enough multiplicity in this defense. I really don't. I don't think there's enough fronts. I don't think they do enough to position the guys from an alignment standpoint to have a chance to succeed, especially on early downs and especially against the run. I want to see more out of this defense tonight from that standpoint because to me, you can't just line up and do what you do. Not in this league. You can't be that type of coach anymore. Multiplicity is key. We know that. We know they're multiple on offense. I want to see more of that on defense. I want to see more. I want to see different tackle alignments. I want to even see them get into some 30 stuff, mix the front, do a little bit more because you have to be better against the run than you were last week. And you're playing a team that's willing to run the quarterback, which is an X factor because now they have a numbers advantage when they can do that. And you're playing a team that still has one of the premier running backs in the league. So Patriots are going to have their hands full tonight up front. That front seven needs to play well. But the coaching staff, Vrabel, Zach Kerr, they need to help these guys by throwing more fronts at Baltimore and aligning these guys in a position where they can have success. Matthias checks back in. He's the third wheel on the show, in case you folks haven't noticed. With Spillane and Williams still out, what can you expect from the defense to try and contain Lamar Jackson from scrabbling? He's scrabbling. Apparently, he's playing Scrabble.
He's a great Scrabble player.
Yeah, he is, I guess. And keeping his gains short in the run game. Well, I mean, again, I just talked about it. You need more fronts. You need more fronts. You need to better mix and match your personnel. Look, if I'm the Patriots, I'm selling out tonight to stop the run. I'm selling out tonight to stop Jackson. I'm selling out tonight to stop Henry. I play a lot of single high. I play a lot of cover three. I play a lot of man free. I might play some quarters and get those safeties involved in run support. But I'm not getting cute with disguises. I'm not getting cute with exotics tonight. Tonight's going to be one of those old school late season football games. It's what separates football from all these other wussy sports. It's going to be one of those man versus man. Who's better, me or you? And let's figure it out in the next 3 hours. It's going to be that kind of game tonight. Patriots are going to need to bring their lunch pail and their work boots because they're going to need it tonight against this team.
Yeah, because the pitcher-batter matchup in the ninth inning of a World Series isn't mano-a-mano enough.
All right. Stop. Just stop. It is mano-a-mano, but it's not the same. They're not physically one-on-one engaging. He's throwing a ball and he's hitting it with a stick. Relax. You're your classic liberal. You immediately have to get upset as soon as somebody says anything that diverges from your thought process.
I'm not upset. You're the guy that's going to blow out the microphone. I'm not upset at all.
You're sitting here. It's not the same, John. It's not the same.
I know that. But
a left tackle versus a right or defensive end matchup is way different than a guy throwing a ball at a guy with a stick. It's much different. There's no physical involvement there. In football, it's winning one-on-one physically. Way different.
Well, I beg to differ that hitting a baseball is physical. There's got to be some hand-eye coordination, timing, all of that stuff. That's part of athletics.
I'm not saying that. I'm not saying it's not any of that. But let's not compare a sport where they run and hide when it rains. Okay, it's not the same. It's not the same. Football is at a different level than all these other sports physically. So let's just agree to disagree.
What are your thoughts on rugby?
I don't care. Rugby, I'll tell you what my thoughts on rugby are. If I had a nickel for every time I talked to a rugby guy who tried to tell me that it's tougher than football, I would have been retired by now. Go ahead. Those are my thoughts on rugby.
All right. No one is questioning how tough football players are.
All right. Let's just stick to the game. No,
but you've got the strongman arguments going. No one disagrees with you on that.
I'm telling you is let's circle back to my original point. This is going to be a game that the Patriots have to win at the line of scrimmage. They got to play tougher. They got to be more fundamentally sound tonight because that's a team that's going to be patient enough to run the football and stick with the running game like Buffalo did in the second half last week.
Yeah, I'm not disagreeing with you, and I think that's the case in most football games. But, yeah, now you factor in weather. You factor in the fact that Lamar Jackson is not throwing the football the way he has been in the past, so their passing game is much more rudimentary than advanced at this point. And then you look at the other side of the football, the Patriots, their passing game was not very good last week, and it kind of brought up the point that was talked about, does Drake May have trouble in inclement weather? And you can go and talk about hand size all you want. You've talked about length of arms for Will Campbell, a tackle, hand size for quarterbacks. I don't know, but I do know that 3 of his 4 worst performances this year came in inclement weather. The opener against the Raiders, the game at Tampa, and last week against Buffalo in snowy, icy, windy, whatever the hell it was, in Foxborough. So he has struggled a little bit in inclement weather. But again, I think he's 23 years old. He's in his second year. He will learn how to adapt to that. I don't think it's a major concern, but it is something that people might question.
Yeah, I know. Well, people will look for any avenue to try to pretend that they're smarter than they really are. So I get it. I mean, look, I don't know how much he struggled in Tampa. I mean, if you're looking at it statistically and you're basing the opinion that he struggles in weather games based on his numbers, sure. I mean, I thought he made some big throws in that game.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, again, what do I know? But all I know is this. I think that tonight, though, we talked about how much of a test that Buffalo game was going to be last week. I think that from a physicality standpoint, this game's going to be an even tougher matchup because let's not forget the Baltimore Raven brand is built on toughness and physicality. This is a team that takes great pride in running the football, playing fast and physical on defense and setting a tone that way. Patriots are going to have to match that tone tonight. They're going to have to. And we're going to find out. I think that the Vrabel way is going to be tested tonight. We knew, right? We knew coming out of the bye that these next two games were really going to test who this team is. And I think even more so than last week, tonight's an even stiffer test in that regard. Because the other thing you got to factor in tonight is you're on the road, and it's a primetime game. It's not a 1 o'clock kickoff at your place against a good team like it was last week. Now you add another element to this that you didn't have to deal with last week. You have to travel. You're on the road in a place that could be a hostile environment, even though Baltimore M&T may not be considered one of the tough places to play in the league. It's a tough place to play because that's a good football team, and they've been a damn good football team for a long time under John Harbaugh. So, and they're well coached. That's the thing. That's the other part of this. You could play a good team that's talented, but not necessarily well coached. This team is well coached. And so I think oftentimes, right, and I hate to keep using old adages like this, but records do go out the window because if you want to be real with yourself, are the Patriots as good as an 11-3 football team? That's debatable. I mean, you mentioned their schedule earlier. As much as I've pushed back on the schedule chatter, I do think that factors into it ultimately. And I do think the other part of it is the Ravens are obviously better than 7-7. It's just been an up and down year for them. So that there's a lot here tonight for the Patriots to unpack. And I think we're going to find out a hell of a lot more about this football team at around 11:30 tonight than we found out about this football team a week ago at around 4:30.
Yeah, this is a major test for the Patriots going on the road against a desperate team. That's the other thing. Baltimore is desperate. Yeah. They still have a chance to win that division if they can win tonight, and if Pittsburgh loses today
and
against
to your
Detroit,
point, not to cut you off, their only path really to the playoffs is they have to win the division.
That's the only path. Yeah, that's it. There's going to be one representative from the AFC North. It's going to be one representative from the NFC South. That's it. The wild cards are going to come from the other divisions. So this is a major test for the Patriots. You're coming off a loss. You're going against a team that is better than their record. Are the Patriots a classical 11-3 team? No, I don't think so. But they've played to that level because they've been well coached. The quarterback's been electric, and their defense was solid until they started facing these injuries with Milton Williams and last week with Robert Spillane. So, this is where you want to try to correct yourself. This would be a massive win. Sunday Night Football with your boy Chris Collinsworth in the booth. It would be a massive win for the Patriots, and it would set them up to maybe clinch the division next week so you can rest starters or do whatever you want to do in Week 18 against Miami. Look, even if they lose this game, they'll be at that point 11-4. Next week, they go to the Meadowlands to play the Jets and Brady Cook. The following week, they wrap the season up at home against Miami and Quinn Ewers. If they can't win those two games against those two quarterbacks, they shouldn't be AFC East champions.
Yeah. Some key numbers here, obviously, in terms of the betting lines. The Ravens are 3-point favorites. The over-under is 48.5 on this one. The money line is plus 150 for the Patriots, minus 180 for Baltimore. Some key statistics to look at here. Points per game. The Patriots are 7th in the NFL, 27.3. Baltimore is 14th at 23.9. But a couple of the interesting numbers to me here are point differential. Patriots are 3rd in the league in point differential, plus 106. Baltimore is 16th at plus 15. Close games. Patriots this season, 6-3 is their record in close games. Baltimore, and this is why they're 7-7, 2-3 in close games this year. And what's interesting to me is that when you look at their average margin of victory, the Patriots' average margin of victory is 11.3 points per game. Baltimore is a 500 football team, and their average margin of victory is 16 points per game. Now, some of that was inflated last week when they shut out Cincinnati 24-0. But, I mean, that just goes to show you how well this team has played the last 8 weeks, that their margin of victory is higher, average margin of victory, I should say, is higher than the Patriots. So, the other thing is I think this game's going to be one on discipline. Both of these teams commit a lot of penalties. Baltimore's 5th in the league in penalties. Patriots are 11th. So you got to play discipline tonight. You don't want the officials to factor into this one. The white hat and his crew, and I'm not sure who the white hat is tonight, but bottom line is they could factor into this one if you play chippy and undisciplined. It's been a problem for the Patriots, more so at the beginning of the year. They've been more disciplined the last few weeks, but nonetheless, another little thing to keep an eye on here. But again, when you look at the underlying metrics here from a matchup standpoint, these two teams have clear advantages, right? New England can throw the football, Baltimore can run the football. It's whichever team executes the best in those areas that's going to win this game tonight.
You think it could be a big night for Kayshon Boutte because he's been there all year when he's been healthy.
I'm
He's come
glad
up
you
with
brought
really
him
big
up.
games.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought him up because I think obviously the focal point is always going to be Stephon Diggs, at least in this iteration of this football team. Hunter Henry as well against Kyle Hamilton, and I have that as one of my 5 key matchups. Diggs versus Marlon Humphrey. But if the Patriots are going to have success throwing the football tonight, I think it's going to be guys like Kayshon Boutte and Kyle Williams that are going to need to step up and play well, because I think those guys are going to get more targets than they have, or at the very least that we're accustomed to seeing in recent weeks.
Yeah, I mean, I think you could try to spread out that Baltimore defense. You can beat them over the top, as you said. Kyle Hamilton right now plays so close to the line of scrimmage, almost like a linebacker at times.
Yeah, he is the most versatile player in the game, and he's a tough guy to game plan against because he can do so much.
Yeah, 6'4", 220. He can rush the passer. He can help in the run game. He can drop into coverage. He's a beast. He really is. He's one of the best defensive players in this league. So you have to try to find ways to maybe get him out of plays, but also if you can go over the top, make some big plays. TreVeyon Henderson, I almost expect him to have a big play or two every week. Just the way the guy is
He's
playing.
your big play guy. He's in essence become your starting running back now.
Right.
So you've got to find a way to get him as many touches as you can, and you got to do it in a myriad of ways. And I think Josh McDaniels has done a really good job with that in terms of the running game. I still think he can be more of a factor in the passing game. I think we need to see more out of him as a receiver. I don't think McDaniels has necessarily done a great job in that regard. If you go back and watch Henderson at Ohio State, specifically last year, I thought Chip Kelly did a really nice job of getting him involved in the screen game, using him both in the slot and as a flanker in the passing game. You got to move him around. You got to do more with him in motion, because I do think he's a matchup piece. And look, this time of year, man, it is about how you use your pieces and how you generate those matchups, because you're only going to come up with so many new plays every single week. Now it becomes about taking what you do, dressing it up, and doing it in a different way. And I think for the Patriots, they really, and they could be saving some stuff, they really haven't done enough with him as a receiver. I kind of feel like you're going to start to see more from him as a receiver. And I might be blowing McDaniels' cover here, by the way. But you might start to see more of him as a receiver in the passing game, more of him in terms of how they use him within formations and personnel groupings and move him around, because he's a dynamic playmaker, and you need that in this offense. You have big play capability and plus territory, but you don't necessarily have that true big play guy. Beyond that, he's that guy. He's the one guy that could do that. Kyle Williams could probably be that guy. I want to see them design more plays for these guys that get them into space, generate matchups. It's the ultimate matchup league. Get them one-on-one against the right player and let them do their thing.
Yeah, I mean, just picture TreVeyon Henderson matched up against a linebacker in space. I mean, that's a total mismatch. That's a 30, 40, 50-yard play waiting to happen. He's been that good the last 8 weeks. He's lived up to that high draft choice, high in the second round, and has been a really breath of fresh air, because he's a player that anytime he touches the ball, he can go to the house. I mean, that run last week against Buffalo, 65-yard run, was basically a broken play, and next thing you know, he's off to the races, and good luck catching him. But yeah, the big plays come in the NFL more and more, I think, every week, because it's tough to go down the field 75 yards, 12 plays, where the quarterback has to be perfect. You can't have any flags. You can't have any sacks. You have to always be going forward. It's tough to pull that stuff off. Sometimes you need those big plays to set you up in a better position.
Some key matchups to look at here from a statistical standpoint in terms of different categories. Patriots offense versus the Ravens defense. Baltimore is number 1 in the NFL in rush defense in the red zone. Patriots are 29th in the league in running the ball in the red zone. So Baltimore is a clear advantage there. In terms of quarterback scrambles, Baltimore is 5th in the league at limiting quarterback run plays. Patriots are 14th in the league in terms of running the quarterback. Of course, Drake May scored 2 rushing touchdowns last week. Going to be harder to do this week. against a Baltimore team that's athletic. That front seven can run. They got a lot of matchup pieces. We mentioned, I should say, Kyle Hamilton earlier. It's going to be tough to get Drake May going on the ground tonight. As far as the Ravens offense versus the Patriots defense, Baltimore is third in the league in terms of running the football out of shotgun. Patriots are 26th in defending gun runs. That's going to be a problem because when Baltimore, specifically when they get into that pistol, they're tough to stop when they start running their read run game and Lamar Jackson can read it and pull it. Patriots are going to have to be really disciplined on the edges. This is a big game for Caleb Vaughn, Chason, and Harold Landry specifically. They're going to need to play smart. Then they're going to need to play patient. And also, they're going to need to be smart as pass rushers in terms of keeping Jackson in the pocket and not allowing him to slip in A gap or B gap and extend plays. I think it's going to be, I should say B gap and C gap. I think it's going to be vitally important that they play discipline on the edge because, again, and I don't necessarily know if you need to sugar rush him, but you probably need to make sure that if you don't overplay things. And oftentimes what happens with pass rushers is they do tend to get up the field too much, and then you get a guy like Jackson who, if you give him a crease in B gap or C gap, he can put it down, take off, and extend play. So a big part of tonight is going to be how the Patriots defend the run, but also how they run the football. A couple of other categories where I think Baltimore has a distinct advantage. They are fifth in the league running against stacked boxes. That's 8-man fronts or more. And they're third in the league running the ball off tackle. And I think you're going to see a lot of that tonight, a lot of outside zone, a lot of pin and pull. They're going to do a lot to attack Landry and Chason. I know if I'm Todd Monken or if I were the offensive coordinator of the Ravens, I'm running the football 65% tonight. That's my game plan, and I'm running everything. I'm running zone scheme, man gap, pin and pull, toss, read it with Jackson, pull it. I really work to get him going in the run game tonight. I'm going right at this team, but I'm not just attacking them inside. I'm attacking them inside and outside. I think Baltimore could have a big game on the ground tonight.
And Derrick Henry, although he's not what he was a year ago, is still an outstanding running back. I think last week he had 11 carries, 100 yards, nearly a little over 9 yards per carry. He's still quite capable of just churning out yards and also making big plays. That's the thing that's always impressed me about Derrick Henry. We're talking about a guy 6'4", 245. Built like an Adonis. He's a future Hall of Famer, Heisman Trophy winner, but he could take it to the house. He's got good speed. It reminds me the most of Earl Campbell. Growing up, Earl Campbell was one of my favorite players. Just a big, powerful guy who could also go the distance. It wasn't like after 10 yards he was out of steam. This guy gets rolling. You're going to be looking at like some long runs, and those are demoralizing when you're in Baltimore facing a team that is desperate and a team that has won 6 of their last 8, and their only 2 losses came at home against Cincinnati and Pittsburgh. So they've played decent football the last 8 weeks. It hasn't always looked pretty, but they are 6-2 over the last 8 games, which is all that matters as we get down the stretch.
And I think if you're a Patriots fan, that's something you can take solace in, knowing that their 2 losses during that stretch were at home to 2 teams that, quite frankly, you're better than. You should have beat Pittsburgh if you didn't turn the ball over 5 times, and you beat Cincinnati. So, and again, Burrow obviously came back that night. That was Thanksgiving night. He played his best game of the season thus far. But I wouldn't use that as a barometer. That Cincinnati team is not very good. He's been hot garbage since. So I don't know how much I put into that game. I wouldn't put much stock in either one of those games because, again, I think that those teams also know each other. Familiarity breeds contempt, and I think you're in a little bit of a different boat here. So we'll see. All right, John, what are 3 keys to the game tonight for the Patriots?
I think you kind of touched on them throughout the show. Ability to run the football so you're ahead of the sticks and that you can open up the playbook for Drake May. Also trying your very best to contain that run game of the Baltimore Ravens. You appear like you think you should sell out to try to stop that and let Lamar Jackson beat you with his arm more than his legs, and with obviously Derrick Henry's legs. And obviously I want to see the special teams improve. But the special teams were a sneaky reason why they lost last week.
They got outgained 167 to 94 last week.
Yeah, that was huge.
Got to be much better.
Absolutely. Be better in that situation. You don't have to dominate special teams, although you got Marcus Jones. At any moment, he can return the ball to the house, although he's questionable tonight. You got a lot of questionable guys on the defensive side of the ball. But those are the key things. And also, you've got to limit how much Lamar Jackson goes to those tight ends. The Patriots have struggled against tight ends. this season, and I have a fear that they're going to do it again tonight against Andrews and Likely.
All right, what is your final prediction here?
Baltimore 31, Patriots 20. I do not feel good about this game.
Yeah, I have a lot of trepidation too, but I'm going to go the other way here. I'm going to take the contrarian route. I think the Patriots do find a way to win, even though I said earlier I could see them losing this game. I think this Baltimore team is way too inconsistent for me to fully be confident in them coming out and winning tonight. I get those same Buffalo Sunday Night Football vibes. I think it's going to be a really close game. I think it's going to go back and forth, but I think ultimately, despite their injuries and despite this being a bad matchup for their front seven, I think the Patriots find a way to pull it out. I like the Patriots in this one. Give me a 24-21 type of game, at maybe a 28-24, but I think that the Patriots do enough on offense to outscore this Baltimore team and get a big W and put themselves in a position now where they, if nothing else, they can win the division now and solidify themselves as the 2 seed. The 1 seed is still there, but I think it's a long shot. I think especially now with Kansas City waving the white flag, I don't see Denver going on the road and losing to them. So we'll see. It would be nice, but I think the 1 seed would definitely be out of reach if they lost tonight. Still in play, but a lot has to happen. All right, John, great job as always. Enjoy the game tonight, and we will talk to you next week ahead of the Jets game.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it.
All right. That'll do it for this episode of the Patriots Pulse Preview Show. For John Sapichetti, I'm John Sirenitas. We will be back with you next week. Until then, enjoy the game tonight and happy holidays. Peace.